Hi, and welcome to Essay 102.1. We're going to jump ahead in history today to the United States. Around the time of the Civil War, it was a remarkable time in history. There was great tragedy just waiting to happen. The United States was early in industrialization. They were coming into their own right of wealth and power, and yet on the brink of war. Organized religions were suffering. Masses of attendees were dropping off. Attendance was very, very low. And yet, it was a time when America needed, the people needed, some way of relating to the enormous loss of life that was coming. People of that time period, all the way up through the Victorians, lived very close to death. It was day to day. It could happen to anyone at any time. People were very accustomed to living with ghosts and the knowledge of ghosts. People would hear and see and sense spirits. And we're not afraid to speak of that. And yet, there were several Americans who experienced something differently. They experienced the ability to communicate with spirit, and they started sharing this, and it caught on. Their neighbors came, the neighbors talked about it, they shared the experiences. Soon newspapers were covering these experiences of the everyday people communicating with spirits. Wow, that was really news. Then politicians and industrialists and scientists started looking into what was then called spiritualist. And it became spiritualism as the masses grew and people who were interested in communicating with those who have passed away. As the war raged on and the volume of deaths grew, people turned more and more to spiritualism to be able to communicate, or at least have an awareness of how to communicate with their loved ones who were lost in the war. President Lincoln and his wife had several seances within the White House in an attempt to communicate with their lost son. President Lincoln often acknowledged spiritualism and spoke of it. So did other presidents in the future. It was nothing that was taboo to be able to speak openly and freely of the desire to communicate with spirits. It was an accepted part of life because people knew that their loved ones had passed and believed that they could still be with them. Now, I'm not going to go heavily into the spiritualist movement. It went on in great speed for many years past that time period. We'll talk about spiritualism in the future, but what I want you to be aware of is it was this movement then in the United States that started reawakening the world to communicating with spirit. This was mankind's beginning of reawakening that had been stifled for thousands and thousands of years in history. But now people were openly talking about it, freely felt it was something that could be spoken of. It spread from the United States to the United Kingdom, then to Europe, and then into South America. Within about 30 years, there were millions and millions of people around the world believing that they could communicate with spirits, while the numbers in organized religions were dropping off even more. It was then that the practitioners of the organized religions, the ministers, the pastors, the holy men, decided to look into the spiritualist movement, and they saw something there that was important. They found that perhaps this would enhance the information for those attending their churches, their synagogues, their temples. So they too shared the information that the spiritualists were sharing. So it was nothing that was considered taboo until much later. But we'll go into that in another class. This class, I want you to understand that for thousands and thousands of years, mankind around the world was quiet about being awakened to the knowledge that they could communicate with spirits. And then, here in the United States, the reawakening happened. And it was a remarkable awakening that man was not afraid to share this information with other men. And it grew and it grew. And then it was prejudices that squashed it, that killed it. It was fear. But we'll go into that later as well. What I need for you to understand is that as you're researching, as you're growing right now, today, when you look up things such as spiritualist or spiritualism, read with an open mind. Do not allow what you read in print to plant falseness into your thinking. Read and look what you read about spiritualism as presenting mankind with the ability to reawaken and reconnect with his own spirit, his own nature. And do not look into anything more than that, because it was that movement that allowed the world the chance to reawaken. As you look into your own awakening, as you go through our classes, keep an open mind. Everything that you hear is totally your choice to accept or reject. It's your choice. The only thing I want you to do is to remain open and clear about what is presented to you. Allow your soul, your heart, and your mind to process this all and welcome in what you can accept and move on from there. This is a wonderful beginning. Recognize that it happened once and it's about to happen again. The reawakening of the world, that man is a spirit with a body. My blessings upon you this day. May you have a wonderful, wonderful time going through our classes. Hit the like buttons. Those are greatly appreciated. Continue punching the other buttons, finding all the wonderful things on this webpage that are waiting for you. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.